Welcome everyone to the Factory Design Utilities for 2022. We're going to take a look at what's new in the utilities and also just what's new in general in terms of the community, the people who are using these tools. It's been, it's been over 11, almost 12 years since the utilities came out and were public. And it's interesting to see how far we have come in with the factory design utilities in the past 10 to 11 years, and then how much of the overall industry has been following suit with what we've been doing with the factory design utilities and developing the digital twin of the factory floor so that we can play around with different scenarios and things like that. So I'm going to start off by saying that there are a lot of new features with the factory design utilities. They're not, it's not a drastic number of new features, but some of the features that we're going to be taking a look at they fall closely in line with what's new with the Inventor application. Inventor has a couple of brand new features, model states being one of them, and the Revit interoperability being another. Those are new features of Inventor, but they really do impact us in the factory design side of things. So I certainly want to take a look at those as we go through the factory design utilities, what's new today. So here's my, I don't know, my top 10 list, I guess, not 10, but we're going to be taking a look today at the Inventor enhancements that really impact the factory design layout process. And if you haven't heard about model states, then we're not going to go in depth with model states today, but model states are some Inventor functionality that's brand new. And really, if I had to put it up on the marquee, what is the marquee feature in Inventor for 2022? What is the one thing that we're going to remember 2022 from with Inventor? And it's model states. So we're going to take a look at how model states for parts and assemblies could impact the way we produce assets for the factory utilities, the way we include machinery in our models. Another one, again, talking about Inventor enhancements, another one that falls right alongside of that is the productivity and performance and interoperability that's been enhanced with Revit and Inventor. You're going to see in a few minutes, you can literally now open a Revit file as an AnyCAD model, and then you can develop your factory layout right in context of the Revit building right inside of the factory layout environment. Not a lot in here as far as drawings and deployments go, but you can deploy your factory utilities the same way you can with all of your other software. But really, we're going to be focusing on the front end of this slide here. So I mentioned model states, and again, this is not a broadcast for all the things that you can do with model states, but model states are by far the biggest enhancement in Inventor 2022. Now, again, trying not to go too in depth here, model states at the part level allow you to generate multiple variations of your model based on suppressing features or based on parametric changes. Every single model state you create has its own iProperty capabilities. It's like having level of detail at the part level. Now, this appears to be really, really exciting for us in the factory asset development area, but I have to tell you, don't go crazy just yet. A lot of the functionality of model states is going to overlap with the way we do things in the factory design process for publishing assets. And there are going to be times when we want to embrace model states, and there are going to be times where we have to avoid using model state functionality when we're producing assets. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But model states, they do so many different things at the part level, and they also do so many different things at the assembly level. At the assembly level, model states literally replace levels of detail. There are no more levels of detail in Inventor 2022. That functionality is now solely part of the model state functionality. But again, you can suppress components per state. You can suppress states in subcomponents. You can alter parameters in assemblies, so you can change, you have parametric control over that. You can override assembly constraints. You can suppress assembly constraints. Again, the list goes on and on and on, how many things you can control with a model state. And listen, if you're building production level machinery, all right, I need you to understand that if you're the designer of these machines, you want to be using model states all the time. Go ahead and do it. It's if you're going to be turning these parts into assets, that's where we're going to run into an issue. That's where we're going to have to be a bit more careful as to what we can use or what we can utilize with model states and the factory asset functionality. I wanted to share with you an example of just a simple addition of model states and what they can bring into our factory layout environment. So I'm going to hop over into my Inventor for a brief demonstration here. I'm going to start a new layout, do a standard factory layout here. And of course, you can publish assets that contain model states. You better, I mean, all parts and assemblies now contain model states. So absolutely, you can publish assets that contain and utilize model states. Here's an example of one I did just in my own personal learning. I'm prepping for an event tomorrow where we take a broader look at how developing a digital factory floor is going to help us visualize workflows and things of that nature. And I'm going to be advertising a bit more about that event a little bit later on today. But I have a machine here, and I think most of us have been familiar with this scenario. I make a machine, and I am, we as our company, theoretically, we produce this machine. This is an air filter machine, and it's got a catwalk along the side of it. It's got, in this particular case, it's got an air filter at the top or off to the side, and there's filters inside of that aluminum case. All right. And this is my full version. And we know that, quite often if I jump in here, I'm going to see detail that's far too much, far too high. If I'm going to take this and create an asset, there's going to be detail in here that I might want to go in and get rid of. So that's fine. But I can take this same asset and I'm going to drop it off here to the side. And I'll drop another one off just so you can see the three versions of this. Now, these particular machines, before I published them, had model states built into them. So this one right here, I'm going to use this one as the fine representation. This particular one had model states for coarse, medium, and fine as far as model fidelity. All right. Now, this is not, what I'm about to do is not a factory utility command at all. It's just it's an Inventor model state command. This one right here, notice I can go to my browser, I can expand the part, and I see its model state options are right here. I can expand that and say, you know what, I want to see the medium version of this one. So we'll double click medium, and that one should show medium now. Actually, I'm sorry, this one is the one that's showing medium down here. I got rid of the grading, so that grading part really was bothering me. So I got rid of that. That way the model's not so heavy anymore. I changed the legs to solid bounding boxes instead of the angle bar legs that were used previously. Or I could go and maybe I want to do a fully coarse. So I could come into this particular one and change its model state to coarse. Now that's just what I named them. You can name them anything you want, but that's the same asset dropped in place, but showing three different, man, I want to say levels of detail so bad, but no, it's showing three different states of simplification. It's showing a fine detail, a medium detail, and a coarse level of detail. So it's really nice to have this functionality almost built in automatically to our components. Now, in this particular scenario, model states and factory assets, great. This is a great way to do things. But there are a few things you've got to take into account. So let's hop back over to PowerPoint and see what those are. All right, migration. All right, usually we don't have any issues whatsoever with migrating from one release to the next as far as our factory assets go. But you're going to see in a moment that the sheer weight of what the factory, of what model states can do is going to cause the factory utilities to want to do a double take when you open up old layouts. So for a while, you're going to see these migration warnings. And it's a very simple situation due to the model state functionality. The factory utilities needs to check and update the asset instances used in the layouts and sublayouts. Now you can select yes or no to do that, but at some point prior to your save or to your check-in, you are going to have to address this, this new level of functionality. Now, why is it doing this? Okay, why do I have to migrate and say yes or no to this? Well, that's coming up here. If you can remember a couple of slides ago, I mentioned that that the model states can control parameters. So you can have a long version, a medium version, and a short version, very much like the old iPart functionality. And many of you who are veteran factory asset users, factory utility users, know that we are not allowed to use iParts as factory assets. Well, right alongside of that, here, model states can control parameter values, and they're not going to let you do that. If you need to control parameter values in your assets so that you have different configurations, the factory utility publishing process has that built into it, and you want to take advantage of that way of doing things. You do not want to try to do that with model states. And it tells you, it's kind of a funny message. I'll let you guys read it, but it basically says, hey, if all of your parameters don't match up exactly, your key parameters, if they're not exactly the same values, we're not going to let you publish. Well, then why would I ever want to include parameters in model states for publishing factory assets? I just wouldn't want to do that. So I'm kind of spinning my wheels if I try to do that, and the factory utilities are not going to let you publish an asset with multiple parameter states built into it. You can do that with the traditional factory publishing tools that are fantastic and work very well. You just don't want to use model states to do it. Now, another inventor enhancement. Okay, this is purely an inventor enhancement, but man, does it have a big impact on us as factory utility users, is the simplification tools. Man, I so much want to say shrink wrap here, but shrink wrap is not an inventor tool anymore. The shrink wrap command's been replaced with the simplification dialog. So the entire simplification dialog now is on a palette all on its own, a browser palette. When you launch it, it has preset states. So you can actually, and you know how it is when you go and you do a shrink wrap today, you go in and you check, 4 or 5 tabs worth of information, and then once you're ready, you can agree and send that data out. Well, all of the information is now on one palette, and you can set up your changes yourself. You can manipulate the way that you want to see things and save the settings so that you don't have to click and reset these over and over and over again. As I said before, the simplification command is going to replace shrink wrap. You still have the other simplification tools. There are a few other simplification tools we have as far as generating bounding boxes and bounding cylinders and turning on and off certain parts that we don't even want to see in the overall export of our simplified component. But this tool is what's going to be used to help us simplify some of these massive production level models and really make producing a functional asset of that model much easier. All right, a few other minor enhancements. These are actually enhancements to the factory utilities, is that you can now access the ILogic form from your browser or from right-clicking in the context menu. Now, this is a really subtle one, so if you bear with me, I'm going to bring in my my lifeboat here. And I like this lifeboat. This is one of the assets that I worked on a long time. And I wasn't the original author of this, but I was kind of following along somebody, and I had to get a form onto this lifeboat that would help you access and place it. Now, for the most part, we're used to being able to select an asset and then go over to the factory properties tool. And somewhere down here, if I can find it, I can get to the form. And there it is. I'll open the ILogic form. And, so I can come in and I can change, things about this particular asset, or maybe I want to modify it a little bit more so you can see it. There we go. And I can change things and I can select done and the asset's ready to go. ILogic forms are a great way for you to personalize the look of your components. But you can now select the asset, right click on it, and come down to the factory flyout that's in the context menu, and you can get to the open ILogic form right there now. So you can do this without having to go to the factory properties palette. And of course, I might want to put this back at 0 degrees and click done. But I can now access the forms by right clicking on the asset and accessing that information there. It's a very nice, it's a simple little addition, but it makes life working with the factory utilities even easier than it was before. All right, I think this next one is huge for the factory design utilities, but it does fall into that camp of what you're about to see is purely an inventor enhancement. Inventor came out with a brand new way to interact with Revit data. There is a Revit interoperability module that's now installed with Inventor that allows you to open Revit files, native Revit files. So you can open them. And what this means for us as factory utility users is, hey, the first thing I can place in my assembly now, in my layout, is a Revit building. Then I can establish my layout positions and I can go start dropping in machines in context of that building. Think about working in context of a point cloud, all right? Or working in context of a DWG underlay. Now we can actually work in context of the Revit model itself. And the Revit model maintains its coordinate system. So I can now export my layouts to Revit. You can now save your files as a Revit component. And if you built it in context of the Revit building with the proper coordinates, then the Revit user is going to be able to take your layout, put it into their Revit model, and have things populate right in place perfectly. So this has been a long time coming, and I really am glad to see how and why and where this information is located. I do have a bit of an animation here I'm going to share with you. I'm going to try to talk through this the best I can. But here you see an example of an Inventor layout. being interoperable with Revit. So here you can see in the video that the author is actually importing a Revit building into Inventor. Then you can come in and you can develop your factory layout any way you'd like it. Of course, you can use the simplification tools that we mentioned earlier to simplify your machines. You can also use the simplification tool here to save as a Revit file. And you want to remember that because the simplification tool is the only way you're going to be able to export a Revit file. Now, these exports are going to export the bill of material information as well. So when the data ends up in Revit, the Revit user is going to be able to access our bill of material information. So here you can see the factory layout being dropped into a Revit model. And of course, the bill of materials and the balloons are all going to be linked correctly. All right. There are some issues about updating. So on the Inventor side, if you want to update something that you've exported to Revit, you simply need to re-export it. Your models that you do export to Revit, there'll be a link in the browser that shows it as a Revit exported file. You just have to re-export it with the new information and update the Revit file accordingly. It's not automatic, but there are some nice little indications there. Now, I thought what we could do is try to look at some of that, maybe not into the detail that that video went into, but to try to look at some of that and to see how this works inside of, a particular layout that we want to work on. So I've got the actual facility you just saw up there a moment ago, but I want to go through at least a little bit of simplification before I choose to export part of this assembly as a Revit file. Now, if you're going to come and look for this information on the factory tab, right, that's not here. That's not where you're going to find it. You're going to find this information on the Assemble tab, and you're going to click on the Simplify command. Now, a couple of things I could do before I ever get started here is I could come in and do a Simplify view. Now, a Simplify view just means that you want to select the components that you really care about. And in this particular case, I just care about this overall subassembly over here. I'll tell you what, I'll use production level C then. That's the one I care about right in there. And I'll click the OK button, and that should turn off everything else except for that bit of information. So real quickly, your Simplify view just got rid of all of that stuff that we don't want, and it only shows, it kind of isolates this data so that we can then take care of it. You can come in, there are define envelopes. So if you want to manually go through and define some of your envelopes, you absolutely can. If I click define envelopes, something like this machine right here, they might not need that information over in Revit. So if I click apply, you'll notice that each of those machines is turned into a bounding box. The same thing with the fence here. I can do the same thing there and apply that. And you'll see that all of those fences are turned into bounding boxes. So same thing with the machines. I'm not going to do all of these for time's sake. But then I'm going to launch the simplify command. Now the simplify command, don't get scared when you see how long this dialog box is. This dialog is really supposed to go over here in your browser. It's a browser palette. So it kind of means to run on top of the browser itself. So looking at what I have here, I have presets at the top. So I have things like remove the least amount of detail, remove moderate detail, remove most detail. And you can check these and see, what these presets might look like. They might work for you. But then you can also use the rest of this to really truly define the particular shape you want. So for instance, replace with envelopes. I might want to do all in one. So I might just want to send the entire thing over. I might want to do individual components instead. And so instead of sending a detailed analysis over to Revit, I might want to do just a simplified form. Of course, I can come in and I can exclude holes, fillets, chambers, pockets, embosses, tunnels, all kinds of things here that we could, further remove detail here. For this example, I do have a very complex machine here that I have already simplified. So I simplified it before I put it into my inventor model. So that's nice. Down here at the bottom though, here is the real kicker. My output type can be set to a Revit RVT. Now, as far as I found, this is the only place you're going to be able to export RVT is via the simplify command. So I can export an RVT file. I can do it all in one element, or I could choose to do each top level element. That's as far as the bill of material structure and how that will actually work. And you can also enable updating if you want to. If you again, if you choose this, you'll see a little marker in your browser when you finish that basically labels this as an exported RVT. And then what you can do is, if you ever sense a change, you can right click and export this again, re-export it, and then notify the Revit user they need to update their file. But very, very nice. Along the same lines, I'm going to stop here with the simplify. I'm not going to export this particular file. But along the same lines, let me close this one. You can now bring in a Revit file into a new layout document. This, again, to me, this is really huge. I can literally go to the Assemble tab and I can use place imported CAD files. I can change my file type to Revit, and I'll go into my buildings. Actually, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank as to where that building is. Maybe it's under Revit buildings. There we go. There we go. So here's my Revit. Here's the original Revit building. I can bring this in. It does tell you that you get better performance if you're looking at the latest, greatest Revit model, but I can choose to open this anyway. Now I have to tell you, I'm going to bring this in as a reference model. Now I'm not going to convert it. We're going to use the AnyCAD format. So this does take a little bit of time. I will tell you that in my experience, this is something that I had to fix to get this to work. I actually had to go in and patch this in order to make this work correctly. So you do want to keep that in mind, that if this doesn't work exactly as you expect it to out of the box, there are some options that you can go in and basically reinstall this Revit interoperability to your side. Now what this is doing is it's looking at the Revit file, and Revit has a lot of different views to import and export. So it will take a little bit of time to do this, but once it's done, if I click OK, I'd be able to insert this on my layout at 0, 0. That's huge, so that the coordinate system that's been created in Revit is now the same coordinate system I can use to generate all of my components. All right, we'll give this just a minute more. I got some better stuff to show you here, but I do want you to be able to see this. While that's coming down, let's go ahead and take a look at the bill of material settings. You can now check your bill of material status when you're publishing an asset. So while you're publishing an asset, whatever asset it is, there is now a bill of materials tab. This is going to give you the chance to mark your asset as purchased. I think that's the one everybody was clamoring for, but it could also be inseparable, normal, or a phantom or reference component. All right, I think everyone though was looking for a quick way to mark your assets as purchased, if at all possible. Along the same lines, when you're using the convert to assets command, you're going to have a new option that's built in that allows you to establish the bill of materials setting. So if you're opening up an existing model and you want to convert a model to assets, you can mark the components right there as you're doing a simple conversion of a single part or a mass conversion of many, many parts. All right, let's hop back over. I think our file is done here with the Revit import. I'm just going to click OK to bring this in. And remember, I started this on the assembly tab, not the factory utility tab. The information is going to come in, and I am going to get that classic, I can right click and place grounded at origin. So hopefully, it's a pretty big file. There we go. So I'd like to right click, place grounded at origin. I mean, to me, that is just amazing that I can do that now. And there is my Revit model. First thing I checked here is I had to go to the view tab. I just had to go to the view tab to make sure that I could do a half section view. So if I wanted to come in and pull a half section off the top of this, I wanted to make sure I could. You absolutely can. So you can get down to the floor of your Revit building. And again, you can start to do your factory layout now based on this. And of course, if you go over and expand the part in the browser, you're going to see the components that make up what is this Revit. I'm going to call it an assembly now, but this Revit model, and you can turn things on and off visibly to get the status of the model the way that you like it. All right, let's see, a couple of other little things that I think are nice. The create sub layout in Inventor. So it looks to me like the command, the command that used to be up here on the ribbon is gone. What you want to do now with create sub layouts in Inventor is you want to select your objects, select the view or the area that you want. You can also select assets. You can select this area and then right click and then come down to the bottom and you'll find create sub layout. And if you don't know, this actually basically spawns a subassembly of this area that I can then pass to another user and they can start working on it and filling out that particular area. Now, Inventor's been able to do this for quite a while. Just the interface has changed here to where you have to select your objects first, and then you can click the create sub layout command via the context menu. Now, new functionality inside of AutoCAD is the ability to create a sub-layout in AutoCAD. It's a very similar process. There is actually a button for it, though, that is on the ribbon inside of AutoCAD. And again, I can open up any particular document I want, and I can highlight a particular area and take that geometry and start a sub-layout or an XREF sub-assembly that I can then pass off to different users and say, hey, here is your portion or your zone of the overall building. You work in this particular zone. When you get finished, let me know and we'll re-import your data to the master model. And this way I can have as many people work on a factory layout project as I need to get the job done quickly. All right, now, when it comes to what's new in the factory design utility world, I do want to kind of highlight a couple of things that I think are really, really special. First off is there is some new training material out there for you to utilize. Now, you will find this training material at the Autodesk Customer Success Portal. And I went through this earlier today, so forgive me if if this doesn't work exactly. But if you go to the Autodesk Customer Success Portal, they call it the Customer Success Hub. Come under Accelerators and select Courses. Now I know you have to really go and look for these, but this is how Autodesk produces training content now. It's not about books anymore, it's about experiences. So if you come down here, you'll find the manufacturing, mechanical engineering category. You can go into this, and I wish we had a better icon because I skip over it all the time, but here you go. Here's the 11 courses for the factory designs utility learning path. Now, personally, I actually generated a lot of these. I didn't do them all, but I did most of them. So it was an opportunity again to work with Autodesk and to develop training content. I just wanted to do it. But there are plenty of really, I think, quite topical exercises up here. One of the ones I'm really most proud of is the return to work and social distancing, where I actually use the factory design utilities to make sure that our users are, within a 2 meter or 6 foot distance away from each other. We can analyze the factory for that. And where we have to, we can put up barriers. We can put up plastic barriers and erect signage so that people know, hey, you need a mask to walk through here, or you want to certain areas could be closed due to COVID restrictions, things of that nature. But worked really hard on these, and I hope that if you're looking for some extra factory utility training, you'll take these into account. Now, also, I wish I could tell you that there is a new book, all right? There is, in a way, a new book. Autodesk has just released a big document. It's a very large document. It's the Factory Design Utility Foundation and Technical Guide, or Technology Guide. Now, this is a great book, but there's no exercises built into this book. It's nice that it's up to date. So really it is, if you ask me, it is really a very, very nicely organized version of the factory design utility help pages. So it's great, but there are no exercises. So what I'm currently working on is taking our current exercise list from the previous class and integrating that into this book. So if you were to come to us today and say, hey, can you give me a factory design utility class, for 5 people? Absolutely, I can. I've got tons of material to utilize for a class like that. I mentioned this already. It's interesting, but if you're a factory design user, then you might want to take a chance and come in and go to your asset browser and type in COVID. Part of what I got a chance to do with Autodesk in the return to work was to go in and make a lot of COVID-related assets. So hand sanitizers and hand washing stations and stickers that go on the floor or signs that go up on the walls, where you want to, make sure your staff knows and abides by these restrictions. So we generated a lot of COVID-centric assets. I want you to know that they're there. Along the same lines as that, and it's just, if you know me, I've published personally, I've published a lot of my point cloud assets at this point. So if you were to go to your factory design utilities and just type in do a search for PC. All right, it's not politically correct, that's point clouds. And you will find a lot of the point cloud assets that I have produced over time listed there. And the same thing with mesh. If you type in the word mesh, I've published a lot of these out to the community in general. So some different people and some things along those lines that you can incorporate into your current factory layout. Now, I got to tell you that really does conclude the stuff that's out of the box with the factory design utilities and what's new. But personally, I have to share with you a big feature that's come into my life recently, and that's a tool called Twinmotion. Now, before you get crazy on me here, I have to tell you that I've been working with the factory design utilities for years. And one of the things that people have always wanted is to be able to drop on a pair of VR goggles and hop into the factory. And for 11 or so years, I've heard Autodesk say things like, well, that's what 3D Studio is there for, or you've got some VRED tools and you've got this or Maya or some other things out there that, and I do not have time to stop and go and take all this training it would take me to get into a virtual reality environment with my factory layout. A few months ago, IMAGINiT made an agreement to support this Twinmotion tool. This is not an Autodesk tool. It is really a tool. It's actually a tool that's used by Epic Games as a game development platform. But what it does is it gives us a simple, easy to use interface so that we can do some high-end visualization. I call it space immersion, where I literally want to walk through these spaces. Yes, VR is here, but there's so much more than that. So in just a few minutes here, I so want to hop over here and I've got my Navisworks file here of a factory that I've done. Now, what I'm going to show you, this is all you would need once you get the, and by the way, Twinmotion you can use in an unlimited capacity for free. So if you can actually use this tool and not pay for it. If you want high resolution imagery, that's when you have to pay for it. Be that as it may, in the traditional sense of the factory utilities, I end up in Navisworks and where everything's come together and I've got my massive model. All I have to do to use Twinmotion is export FBX. And this is one of my larger models and it takes no time at all to export to FBX. But then I can go over here to this Twinmotion tool and I can go over here to the import command. I can select open and I'm going to import that factory from Navisworks into this environment. It does not take long at all. I'm scratching my head as to how this is doing this so fast, but it does it very, very well. And when it does come in, you want to remember you're in a gaming platform, so your ASWD keys and the motion of your mouse is what you're going to use as you're looking at these particular components. Now, I'm not going to, this is not a Twinmotion demo here, but I am going to fix this a little bit. I do need to lift this up a little bit. I included some topography here. But now I can fly down here and let's go inside for a moment. And let's see what else we can do. One of the things that I love about this is the ability to add materials. So the glass up at the top of, when I made these windows initially, I had this idea that they would be, you know, a glass environment. So I could pull the glass up to the windows and let the light shine in. That's very easy, just to drag and drop. Watch this. If I want to turn on the lights, I modeled my lights all with a consistent color, so I can click and turn on my lighting environment. Everything is ready to go. And I just did mention, I think, to you guys a few minutes ago, you just have to love old iMic. Some of the old people that are traditional now to the factory utilities have been around for a long time. And I don't know how to say this other than to just show you there are characters here. So you can bring in a ton of different animated characters. And of course, thank goodness, we've got guys that we can bring them in and drop them off. And I don't know, which one do you like better, iMic or this guy? And of course, he's standing idle right now, and I don't know why it makes me so much fun for me to do this, but I can make him dance if I want to. The nice thing, the ability to make these high-end visualizations is fantastic. You get a fantastic rendering platform. If pretty pictures are what you're after, goodness sakes, this is going to do it for you. But look over here to the left. Are you ready to go to VR? Then you simply hook up your VR headset to your computer and you go into VR right there. Now, I can't demonstrate that to you guys today on this call, but it is that easy. This is a VR environment where you're working in. I can have people walk around the facility. I can have people climb ladders and walk upstairs. And there really is no end to the amount of interaction I can use with this application. It is really, really nice. And at the end of it, what I can do currently, what I can do is I can take these presentations, I can store them up on a cloud and then have a collaborator go to the cloud directly with just an internet browser and see this kind of quality interaction. I might not want my collaborator to see my worker dance like that, but it's extremely nice. It looks good. It's so easy to use. I wanted to be able to share this with you because I have been waiting for this kind of solution since the factory utilities came out. And now I see it. It doesn't come from Autodesk. And I'll be honest, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, this is going to cost me a fortune, I'll tell you what, you need to sit down with, you need to contact one of your IMAGINiT account managers, tell them that you want to see some twin motion and see what the price is. It is nowhere near as expensive as you think it is. And remember, you can actually use this tool for free if you just want to do the low end resolution stuff. So to me, that's what's new in Inventor Factory Design Utilities for 2022.